Singapore has been revered as an expat utopia, consistently ranking high on surveys of places to live and work for expatriates. As a financial hub, the country has welcomed skilled foreigners to give the country an edge in the global market. With a population of 5.6 million, 600,000 are estimated to be professional skilled workers on employment pass visas. Is such a significant transient foreigner population taking away from a cohesive Singaporean society? Indrajit Advani, who is an expat from the UK, lives in Singapore with his family. We asked him whether he feels integrated into the Singaporean society.
Socially, as you can see here, I live in a place which is predominantly inhabited by expats, and therefore, the interaction tends to be with foreigners. My wife is also a foreigner, so her comfort zone is people of her own race and people who speak her same language.
Many expats in Singapore live in condominiums with primarily expatriate residents. Their children go to international schools, and certain spots have been stereotyped as being only for expats. We went to Dr. Matthew Matthews from the Institute of Policy Studies at the National University of Singapore to ask what the reasons behind this separation might be.
Well, to begin with, the expatriates are here on a short-term pass, for instance. And many employment passes are for 2 years, 3 years. They belong to multinational companies. They have no idea whether they're going to be here for a while. So essentially a transient. If you're a transient population, if you don't really feel that you will be sinking your roots here, then generally there's little incentive to try to go out of your comfort zone, to be with people who might be more different from yourself. So with that, the general feeling for many expatriates is to ensure that they live in a pleasant way, but without causing any major friction. At the same time, not necessarily having to go out of themselves to do something.
But in a country where a large section of the population is foreigners, could the clear differentiation between foreigners and locals be creating a divided, fragmented Singaporean society?
You do have groups who might not always fit in, but yet who see that they are part of a bigger space. So for instance, they do know that what are the important norms of living in Singapore society. They do know that there's some things which are really taboo and they have to keep themselves away from. So that kind of recognition allows society to, carry on with some kind of sense of cohesiveness.
Alex Mitchell, a professor at NUS, first came to Singapore on a temporary visa 20 years ago. He has since become a permanent resident and has a Singaporean wife. With Singapore's population essentially comprising immigrants, having a common identity is difficult, and the label of local versus foreigner might itself be problematic to him.
What does it even mean to be local? Right, like my wife's grandmother was from China, and my wife's parents were both born in Singapore. So at what point, where do you draw that line? Does that mean that my wife's grandmother is a foreigner? Well, she was at one point, and at the same time I was born in England, grew up in Canada, lived in Singapore for 19 years. And actually, when I was asked to do this interview, I was thinking, actually, am I an expat? Am I local?
As many expats continue to settle into Singapore and call this country their home, the focus has to be shifted by both the local Singaporeans and the expatriates to do away with the barrier associated with their titles. Can we, as a nation, increasingly realize a common Singaporean identity and work towards a coherent society?